Hello my peeps, this is a video about integers. I will be your host, Mr. Shirley, the man with a face for radio. Now please make a few notes as we're going through this, but since it should be a review, you can keep those notes fairly brief. Okay, so make sure your note has a title and a date on that, and you don't have to write down the learning goal, but our point today is just to review some integer terminology and compare and order integers. Okay, so a good definition for an integer is a whole number, very important, that can be positive, negative, or zero. Okay, you can have decimal numbers that are negative, that's just fine, but we typically don't call them integers. Okay, because an integer needs to be a whole number. Okay, now one way of thinking about integers, and we will use this fairly frequently, is a number line. Okay, so if I were to just, it helps us consider differences between numbers, for example, positive 5 and negative 5. So positive 5 would probably be up here, negative 5 would be down here. And it's another way of thinking through some of the arithmetic that we will do later this week. Okay, so when we're thinking about how far apart things are, for example, whether we're going in a positive or a negative direction, things like that, number lines will pop up a number of times through the work and through my videos. If you hate number lines, that's fine, you don't have to use them, but some people find it easier to comprehend and think through the use of integers using a number line. Okay, so if you don't like them, don't use them. Leave that up to you. Now, what I'd like you to do on this slide here, so find the opposite of each integer given below. It's fairly straightforward with the opposite. It is the same number, but just with the sign flipped. Okay, so the opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. Shocking. Now, the opposite of negative 14, positive 14, so please go through and do those. So the opposite of plus 7 is negative 7. The opposite of negative 572 is positive 572. The opposite of 0 is nothing. That's right. There is no opposite of 0, not when it comes to integers. 0 is, depending on where you read it, neither positive or negative, or both positive or negative. Personally, I prefer the neither positive or negative because that just makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. So we're going to stick with that, but it doesn't have an opposite. Okay, when we're doing adding and subtracting later, knowing these opposites will be very helpful. If you're adding and subtracting 0 to something, it's kind of just a waste of writing. You don't do anything at all, so you don't really need an opposite for it anyways. On we go. So put the following integers in order from largest to smallest to largest. Please take a moment, pause the video and try that out just to review and make sure you're comfortable with how you order integers. Okay, and what matters with it. So pause it, give it a go. Okay, I'm going to assume you did that. You aced it, you're perfectly comfortable, but just in case you're not, we're going to go through the video. Now, keep in mind that the amount of the numeral part of the term here, that tells you how much positive or negative you are. Excuse me. So negative 300 means it's a very negative number, which means it's very small. So the bigger the number in a negative direction, the smaller it is. Okay? A bigger number in a positive direction means it's a larger number. Okay, that sounded kind of redundant, but hopefully that made sense. So the next one is going to be minus 7. So again, we're getting steadily larger as we go through these numbers. So minus 300, so minus 7. Next one is minus 2. Okay, and getting larger because the numerals are getting smaller, but because they are getting smaller in a negative direction, that means they're getting steadily more positive. Okay, so I'm just going to pop back to our number line just for a moment, just to make a point with that. So we had one that was negative 7. Make a really ugly dot here. And then negative 2, so you can see how we're moving in a positive direction, even though the numbers themselves are getting smaller. So the next number was 0, and that's moving again in a positive direction, which would be this way. Okay, and that looks like a weird happy face, or I don't know what kind of emotion you would give to that face. Anyways, on we go. I'm going to pop back to the other slide, and next one will be 0, and then hopefully you're good on ordering 5 and 22. Okay, so 5th and 6th. So that's our order from smallest to largest. On to the last slide. Use the symbol, so greater than or less than, to indicate which is larger. Again, this is just a little more practice with the idea of the numerals themselves. If they are more negative, if it's a negative number with a larger digits, that means it is a much smaller number. Okay, so just as an example, again, I would like you to pause it and try and go through this. I will wait just a second while you pause the video and do that, and then on we go. But since this should be a review, I don't anticipate too many troubles with it. So positive 4 is bigger than negative 3, of course. Positive 32 is bigger than negative 5. 0 is bigger than negative 4. Again, it's larger because it is more in a positive direction. 5 is bigger than negative 2. Negative 3 is bigger than negative 4 because, again, you've moved in a positive direction. So even though the digit 3 is typically smaller than 4, because they're negative, you've moved in a positive direction, so negative 3 is bigger. Same idea with this one. So negative 2 is larger than negative 1,000. Okay, so try out the homework that goes with this just for review. Make sure you're comfortable with the integer usage. And please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks very much for watching.